I always thought I had a picture-perfect marriage. 7 years with Emily felt like a lifetime of stability and quiet love. She had this way of filling a room with warmth without even trying. Her laughter was soft, like a breeze you barely noticed until it was gone. People used to tell us we were the ideal couple, and maybe that's why I never saw the cracks forming. Emily was an art teacher, creative, spontaneous, the kind of woman who could make a dull afternoon feel vibrant just by picking up a paintbrush. I, on the other hand, worked in finance. My days were structured, calculated, and admittedly, sometimes boring. But Emily claimed she loved my predictability. She said it made her feel safe. That was enough for me. When she mentioned wanting to take a photography class, I didn't think much of it. She'd always dabbled in different hobbies of pottery, yoga, even salsa dancing for a few weeks. Photography was just another phase, I figured. She told me about this local studio run by a professional named Adrian Cole. He was well known in the community for his portraits, moody, artistic shots that seemed to tell a whole story with just a glance. "You should see his work, Daniel," she'd said one evening, showing me his Instagram. "He captures people like they're more than just themselves. I want to learn how to do that." I remember smiling, kissing her forehead, and telling her to go for it. I was glad she was finding joy in something new. At the time, I didn't notice the spark in her eyes when she talked about that studio. I didn't notice how much time she started spending there. For the first few weeks, it seemed harmless. She'd come home with stories about lighting, lenses, and editing techniques. She showed me a few of her shots, mostly street photography, still life arrangements, some portraits of classmates. But slowly, her descriptions shifted. Adrian started creeping into the conversation more and more. "Adrian says I have a good eye for composition. He even let me use his professional equipment today," she said once, almost shyly, like a student proud of her teacher's praise. "That's great, Em," I replied, barely looking up from my laptop. I was tired from work, too focused on the quarterly reports I needed to finish. I didn't catch the subtle change in her tone, the way she said his name with just a little too much admiration. Then came the late sessions. She told me Adrian offered private lessons for students who were really serious about improving their craft. "It's just a couple of extra hours in the evening," she explained. "He wants to help me build a portfolio." I didn't question it. Why would I? She was my wife. I trusted her completely. So I stayed home, cooked my own dinners, and waited up for her while she stayed at the studio past 9, sometimes 10. When she'd return, she always looked different. Flushed, distracted, but smiling. She'd kiss me on the cheek, apologize for being late, and head straight to the shower. It wasn't until I noticed the little changes that unease crept in. She started wearing more makeup, even on days she wasn't planning to leave the house. Her wardrobe shifted, flowy skirts, tighter blouses, things she hadn't worn since our dating years. She began talking less, almost as if she was carrying something inside she couldn't share. The real crack appeared one Saturday morning. Emily had left her camera on the kitchen table while she took a call in the other room. Curious, I picked it up, flipping through the shots. There were photos of the usual flowers, city streets, candid portraits of strangers. But then, buried deep in the memory card, I found a series of images that made my stomach twist. They were of her. Emily sitting on a stool, bathed in soft studio lighting. Her blouse slightly undone, revealing more than I'd ever seen her show publicly. In one, she was laughing, her head tilted back, lips parted. In another, she was staring directly into the lens with an expression I couldn't place, somewhere between vulnerability and desire. And behind the camera, reflected faintly in a mirror, was Adrian. Smiling. Watching her like she was his masterpiece. I put the camera down, my hands trembling. My heart pounded in a way that made me feel sick. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe it was just an exercise in portraiture. Maybe it was purely artistic. But deep down, something primal told me otherwise. That evening, I asked her casually about the photo shoots. She avoided my eyes, her voice just a little too careful. "Oh, it's just practice," she said. Adrian thinks modeling for each other helps us understand how to capture emotion. Emotion. Right. I wanted to press further, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I watched her closely over the next few days, waiting for a sign. And it came, subtle, but undeniable. The way she smiled at her phone when a notification popped up. The way she suddenly guarded her messages, taking her phone with her even when she went to shower. The night it all fell apart started like any other. Emily told me she was going to the studio for a late-night session, something about experimenting with low-light photography. But she forgot something, her other phone. The cheap little backup she used for her classes. A notification lit up the screen as I was cleaning up after dinner. It was a message from Adrian. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that red dress again. You looked incredible in it. I don't know how long I stood there staring at that message. My mind refused to process it. Wear that red dress again. It wasn't just flirtation. There was familiarity. Intimacy. My hands tightened around the phone as if I could squeeze the meaning out of the words. I wanted to throw it against the wall. Instead, I carefully placed it back on the table, as though keeping things neat could somehow keep my life from unraveling. I told myself to stay calm, to think before doing something reckless. But calm wasn't an option. That message echoed in my head for the rest of the evening like a drumbeat. When Emily came home later that night, I watched her like she was a stranger. She walked in quietly, tiptoeing almost, as if she didn't want to disturb me. Her hair was tousled in a way that wasn't accidental. I could smell perfume on her that she didn't wear for me anymore. "You're up late," she said, forcing a casual smile. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." My voice felt dry. She gave me a kiss on the cheek, soft, almost mechanical. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to shower." I didn't answer. I just watched her walk away. When the water started running, I went to the laundry basket. There it was, the red dress. Crumpled, smelling faintly of studio lights and someone else's cologne. My stomach twisted so violently I had to steady myself against the wall. That was the moment I knew. There was no more room for doubt. The next day, I took off work and drove past the studio around the time she said she'd be there for her private lesson. From the outside, Adrian's studio didn't look like much, a modest building with large windows covered in blackout curtains. I parked a block away and waited, heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. Sure enough, I saw her arrive. She wasn't dressed like a student. She was dressed like a lover. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing that same red dress. She glanced around nervously before ringing the bell. The door opened, and I caught a glimpse of him, Adrian. Tall, well-groomed, with that smug confidence that oozes off men who know exactly how they look to women. He pulled her inside. No hesitation. No second guessing. And then the door shut. I sat in the car for what felt like hours, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could leave. Pretend I hadn't seen it. Confront her later with just the text. But some part of me, the part that couldn't let go without proof, needed to know what was happening behind those curtains. So I moved. I parked closer this time, slipping quietly toward the back alley. There was a small ventilation window slightly ajar. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Inside, the studio was bathed in soft, golden light. Photography backdrops hung like curtains. And in the center, on a stool, was Emily. My Emily. She was laughing, her hand covering her mouth, looking younger and more alive than I'd seen her in years. Adrian was behind the camera, circling her like a predator admiring his prey. "Tilt your head just a bit." "Perfect," he said. "God, you're beautiful like this." "Do you know that?" She blushed, lowering her eyes. "You always say that." "Because it's true." He put the camera down and walked toward her slowly. I could see the shift the moment the photo shoot wasn't about photography anymore. He touched her chin, lifting her face to his. "You don't know what you do to me," he whispered. She didn't pull away. She didn't even hesitate. They kissed. Soft at first, then deeper, like two people who had crossed this line many times before. His hands roamed her body with ease. And she let him. I felt the air leave my lungs. My heart didn't just break, it shattered. I pressed my back against the cold wall outside, every part of me screaming to burst in there, to rip them apart, to demand why. But I didn't. I just stayed there, paralyzed, watching my wife lose herself in another man's arms. When they moved toward the photography bed, some prop for boudoir sessions, I couldn't watch anymore. My vision blurred, rage and grief mixing into something raw and uncontainable. I stumbled back to my car, barely able to breathe. The drive home was a haze. My thoughts raced between fury and despair. How long had this been going on? Was it just him? Did she ever really love me? Or was I just safe? When she came home later, she looked radiant. Like someone who'd just lived a fantasy. She kissed me on the cheek again, softer this time, maybe even guilty. "Daniel," she asked, noticing my silence. "You okay?" I stared at her. At the woman I thought I knew. At the woman who was now a stranger. "Yeah," I said finally, my voice hollow. "Just tired." She smiled faintly and went to the bathroom to wash up. I sat there in the quiet, gripping the edge of the table so hard my fingers ached. I realized something then: I couldn't just confront her without a plan. If I exploded now, she'd deny it. Gaslight me. Maybe even twist it into my fault. No, I needed to be sure. I needed to see how far she'd go. So I decided. I would wait. I would collect everything. And when the time came, I'd let her know I knew. But in the dark, a single question kept haunting me, louder than my own heartbeat. Why wasn't I enough? For 3 days, I lived in silence. Emily moved around the house like nothing had changed, smiling, making small talk, humming to herself while she prepared her morning coffee. I watched her, and all I could see was the image of her lips on his. I couldn't hear her voice without remembering the way she whispered his name in that studio. I barely slept. At night, I'd stare at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage. The late nights she claimed were spent working on her portfolio. The sudden distance in our intimacy. The subtle shift in her laughter. And through it all, I kept asking myself the same question: when did she stop being mine? By the 4th day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. That evening, she came home wearing that same red dress. I knew exactly where she had been. She set her bag down, glanced at me sitting silently at the kitchen table, and smiled like she always did. "Hey, babe," she said softly. "How was your day?" I didn't answer. I just placed her phone, the one she'd left behind last week, on the table. The screen was lit up, displaying Adrian's latest message. Her face drained of color. "Sit down," I said. My voice was calm, but it wasn't my voice anymore. It was something cold. She didn't move at first. Just stood there, frozen, her lips parting slightly like she wanted to speak but didn't know what words could possibly save her. Finally, she sat across from me, folding her hands in her lap like a child caught doing something forbidden. "How long?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Daniel, Don't," I cut her off. "Just answer me. How long has it been going on?" Her eyes filled with tears instantly. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to." "How long?" I repeated, my voice sharper this time. She looked down at the table. "A few months." I felt something inside me snap. Months. Months. While I was at work building a life for us, she was building a fantasy with him. "Did you love him?" I asked. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It wasn't about love. It was about feeling something. I felt alive again, Daniel. I felt seen. You've been so distant, so focused on work, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. "Don't you dare blame this on me," I said. Don't you dare. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming myself. I was selfish. I wanted to feel beautiful again. And Adrian, he made me feel like I was more than just. Your husband didn't make you feel beautiful enough? The man who stood by you, loved you without question, never once strayed? That wasn't enough? She covered her face with her hands. I don't know what I was thinking. I hate myself for it. I hate what I've done to you. I stared at her for a long moment. She was crying, but it didn't move me. Not anymore. I'd already seen the truth behind those tears in that studio. You know what's the worst part? I said finally, my voice steady. I watched you. I saw you with him. I saw you choose him. Her breath caught. You saw? Yes, I whispered. I saw everything. And in that moment, I realized the woman I married is gone. Whatever you've become, I don't know her. I don't want to. She reached across the table, desperate, but I pulled my hand back like her touch might burn me. Daniel, please. I made a mistake. I can fix this. I'll end it. I'll delete his number. I'll never step foot in that studio again. Just, don't give up on us. Please. I shook my head slowly. This isn't a mistake, Emily. A mistake is a slip. A one-time thing. You made a choice. Over and over again. She sobbed harder, her body shaking. I can't lose you. But the truth was, she already had. I stood up, feeling strangely calm, like the storm inside me had finally settled into a cold, quiet sea. I'm leaving for a while. Don't call me. Don't text me. I need space to figure out what's left of me after this. She tried to stand, but I held up my hand. Stay. For the first time in our marriage, she listened. I stayed with a friend for the next few weeks, trying to untangle my emotions. She sent messages, long apologies, confessions of regret, promises that she'd do anything to make it right. But every time I read her words, all I could see was her laughing in his arms under those studio lights. I filed for divorce quietly. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just wanted my life back. My dignity. My peace. The day she signed the papers, she didn't speak. She just stared at me with those tear-filled eyes, like she was hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. As I walked away from that courthouse, I realized something important. Sometimes the person you love the most becomes the one who teaches you the harshest lessons. Love isn't blind. It sees everything. It just chooses to look away until it can't anymore. It's been a year since then. I've moved into a new place. It's smaller, quieter, but it feels like mine. I've started therapy, picked up running, even traveled a bit, things I never made time for before. And sometimes, when I pass by a photography studio, I still feel a pang. But it doesn't cut as deep anymore. Because I know now that her betrayal wasn't about me. It was about her emptiness, her choices. And I'm finally learning to fill my own life with something better.